And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and wherever you are, welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. Well, I just got here up on my neighbor's driveway and started to look at things, and I saw that YouTube took down a few of my shows because of violent. Let's see what they say. Uh, let's see. Let's go to. Here we go. Inboxes. Let's see. Hi, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. Our team has reviewed your content, and unfortunately, we think that it violates our misinformation policy. We removed the following content video. How free are you? We know that this might be disappointing, but it's important to us that YouTube is a safe place, right? If content breaks our rules, we remove it. If you think we've made a mistake, how your content violates policy, content that advance false claims, widespread fraud, errors and glitches, changes outcome, how this affects your channel. Um, Yep. So, I guess I'm doing my job right. Because what do I say right from the start? Don't believe a word I say. You know, at work, uh, they can't candle the truth. Yep, they can't candle it. I love that process, candling. Um, handle, right. But candle is a good one too. Um, so it's interesting. And, you guys at YouTube, the more you do that, thank you very much. It's like getting 1,000 thumbs up. So, hey, Mr. Tool, give me a thumbs up. Let's see, give me a thumbs up. So, and everything. It's getting a little toasty. I have to take off a few things. Do 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 do. Scooby Dooby Doo. So I guess let's hear from this. I was listening to this earlier today, and I'm going to play it for you right now.
The American Legislative Exchange Council, or more often known as ALEC, which has pushed other anti-protest, pro-fossil fuel, and stand your ground laws across the U.S. But these bills, specifically these critical infrastructure bills, they use that vague term, but they're specifically designed to deter protests against pipelines and fossil fuel infrastructure. These protests have historically been led by indigenous activists, water protectors, and other frontline communities. And these bills severely threaten people's free speech, protesters' safety, and our ability to tackle climate change, because protest has been a successful tactic in slowing the build out of new fossil fuel infrastructure. So at Climate Cabinet, we're really worried about how these types of efforts at the state level can spread quickly across states, even without federal action, which is what we saw here, severely threatening our democracy and our ability to act on climate change.
Go into some detail, if you would, about the various harsh penalties that are invoked here in these new statements.
Too much junk file on your phone. Clean up.
So, what that is, it's a radio show. My public radio station, WETSU, really does a great job of being the fourth state. It really has great shows. And this is, I'll have to play the rest of it to get the name of it and its location. But it's an environmental show, right? And on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings, they play some really great socially conscious radio programming. And thing is that there's a great deal of it all over the web, right? And that's why there's a friend of mine. I'm going to play maybe some of it, the conversation we had. And he's always going on about how we have to twist the arm of the media to tell the truth. Well, that's never going to happen because they don't care what the audience says, right? As long as they get like 3% watching it, that's all they care about. The other 90 something percent, they couldn't care less, right? So, and then if the web gets too problematic for them, they will do what other states do and just turn it off, right? They can, right? It's a little more difficult in the United States, but in countries like Iran and Nigeria and Russia and other China, they can just hit the switch and it's off, right? So, which would just infuriate the folk even more. I mean, China's having a real hard problem. A friend of mine sent me a video. Let's see if we can look this video up, and it's this guy going on about blah blah blah. What's scary? Oh, we had to shiver in our boots about this. And and uh, let's see. Hey there, Jenny. Jane and Jamie and Dr. Tool. So let's see if I can get this other video up here. Oh, there he is.
Wow, haha. I want that treasure. How can I get it?
How can I get it?
Let me get
Successfully test fired. It is a nuclear-powered, very long-range missile described by U.S. authorities as a unique weapon with intercontinental range capabilities. It's designed to carry a nuclear warhead. It has a built-in mini-sized nuclear reactor, supposedly providing a range far longer than any previous missile system. The nuclear energy core, they say, could make it travel around the Earth multiple times. It can fly under radar detection at very low altitudes, and it has the capability to completely wipe out missile defense systems in the USA. Russian state media, they are saying that this nuclear war.
So the problem with any stuff that people are touting, this brand new weapon. No, this nuclear weapon was developed. This missile was developed in the 50s by both Russia and the United States. And they found that there was no tactical or strategic use of it because basically what it is a it's like a how can I say it? It's not just a reactor. It is a constant nuclear explosion or detonation or explosion of that high energy, right? And so that's why the thing can go around the world 5-10 times. But it's like a flying Chernobyl, and the radiation that it expels as it flies, if it's going low, if they launch it somewhere in Russia, the only two paths they can use this missile is either over Russia or over China. And if they go at treetop level or under radar, basically it will expel a tremendous amount of deadly radiation. So everyone under the path of this missile for about 50 miles in each direction will be contaminated, and anybody within 4 or 5 miles under the path of this missile each side will basically die relatively soon in a very disgusting way. It's like being exposed to the radiation of a Hiroshima or Nagasaki weapon without the blast, without, um, and so that is, and see that, a nuclear explosion, it goes bang, there's bright light, and then, heat and concussive wave, and that is the instantaneous critical mass, you know, going out. But when that mushroom cloud goes up and you see all this purple and silver and craziness on inside of that cloud, that is a continuation of the propagation of the radiation. And when I was a 6-year-old boy, my dad took me to the nuclear test site. I think it was in Utah, and I saw a above ground nuclear test of between a tactical nuclear weapon and Hiroshima type. And we were like 20 miles away, and it was pretty intense. And when the flash went off, we weren't facing it. And I had like a lead cape over me, and I was greased up, and I had welder goggles on. And we were looking at the concrete wall of the blockhouse. And we were out in the parking lot. And they go, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bam, right? And the flash of the light, I saw the shadow of all of us who were standing in line. And then the speaker said, "All right, safe to turn around." We turned around, and the cloud is going up. And it was like no moon, not a cloud. And it was, I don't know if it was warm-ish. It wasn't summertime and it wasn't wintertime, and it was probably early spring. And and I'm wearing welder's goggles. And my father says, "Put your hand up in front of your face," and I did, and I could see the bones in my hand. That's the level of radiation, right? X-rays. And so these weapons that they are touting, they have very little tactical or strategic, because that's what mutual assured destruction was. If you launch on us, we will have launched all our missiles on you before your missiles hit us, so we will both be dead, right? So that's mad. And the tactical use of weapons, all it does is, uh, you know, notches up. So Russia used a tactical weapon, we use a tactical weapon. If Russia were to use a tactical weapon, NATO would be all in, right? And Russia's, military has been decreased, made weakened by little Ukraine, right? Ukraine's been keeping them at bay and winning for the last 7 months. So all of, um, Europe goes in on Russia, and right now, that we have been in an economic morass, basically since 1972, since the oil embargo, right? And we have done all kinds of different things. Like we gave up all the gold, and we turned everyone in America into a commodity, right? And that's why you drive around America, you go to a little town, incorporated village, incorporated town, incorporated city, incorporated state, incorporated country, and so we are a corporation, right? So at a certain point, what does a corporation do within the construct of? See, we don't have capital. We don't have Adam Smith capitalism, because Adam Smith said, the state is in business, to provide order and safety to the community, right? And business is there to provide a fluidity of capital. That's what capitalism is, a fluidity of capital to bring forth a commercial and physical well-being to the community. And the community is there to move forward, right? Well, that's Adam Smith capitalism. Well, we don't have that. What we have is egoism, meaning ego, and it's not even capital. Ego is the capital, right? And that's why we have, 1/10 of 1% having, 80% of the wealth, right? And everyone else just scrapping along. Now, we live in a world of extraordinary abundance. Everyone should be able to have what they need and not, you know, be living in mud huts. And in Africa, every country that has resources has a civil war going on right now. Every country that doesn't have any oil or gold or diamonds or anything, they have peace, right? So that's where we are at, and that is the real violence. YouTube said. Let's go back to what YouTube said. Put my glasses on. Ooh, boo, 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 boo. Boo, 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 boo. Doop, 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 doop. So YouTube said, our team has reviewed your content, and unfortunately, we think it violates our misinformation policy. We removed the following content from your YouTube video. How free are you? I wonder what that was about. We know this might be disappointment, but it's important that YouTube is safe place for all. If your content breaks our rules, we remove it. If you think we've made a mistake, it's you just said it right there. YouTube is. It's important to us that YouTube is a safe place, right, for them. If content breaks our rules, not the rules of the community, their rules, right, we remove it. If you think we made a mistake, well, they're your rules. You didn't make a mistake. Like I said, by you doing that, you have just given me 8 million thumbs up. Thank you very much, Mr. YouTube. And now I would suggest everyone in the cadre or anybody who watches the show or anybody, my content is still there, but who knows for how long. Now, I'm not married to any one of my shows because each one of them is, there for entertainment's sake, right? But why I do it is that it is a pebble into the pond of the collective unconscious of the World Wide Web. And it's out there, right? No matter what they do, it's out there, right? And so, and I've written a tremendous amount, right? I've got novels and essays and reports and all kinds of stuff. And I live out in the middle of nowhere, right? And still I cause consternation because I have this innocent point of view. I would say, naive in that I believe in love's co-creation. Now, I don't believe it. I have faith in it, in that I have experienced it my whole life, right? When I was a sophomore in high school, I had a great teacher, Mr. Bukhar, and we were walking from, this school was the prep school, Winchendon School for Boys, and it was where the super, super elite of, guys like Jeffrey Bezos and, Elon Musk and Bill Gates, they didn't go to a school like this. They couldn't even touch it. Now, they went to their own special school, but they were, and that's what I was being, attempted to be, programmed and slash prepared, sculpted to be a upper management character for the unipolar transnational. I can't quite. Khazarian mob. It's probably the best way to put it. And so go do your homework and look up Khazarian mob and see who they are, right? and it will inform you on who took down my show. And interesting, how free are you is the one they took down. So, or how to be free. That's, oh boy, you know. And because my shows are these days, how to be happy, and that's what they want. Let's see, where are my glasses? Uh, let's see. If your content breaks our rules, we remove it. If you think we've made a mistake, you can appeal. Keep reading for more details. How your content violated policy. Content that advances false claims that widespread fraud. Really? I keep saying, don't believe a word I say. This is only for entertainment's sake. Nothing in this is true, within the construct of your corporate belief structure. It's not true. Let's see. The outcome of the U.S. 2020 presidential election is not allowed on YouTube. Did I say anything about that? I don't know. And so what's one they said that how free are you? That was the one they took down. That was a question I was asking the audience. How free are you? Right? They didn't want you to think about that. Right? Again, don't believe a word I say. This is just for entertainment's sake. I am a stand-up comedian like the president of Ukraine and Jimmy Dore, right? I'm somewhere in between, right? I don't have a government behind me, and I don't have a corporate sponsor like Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore is the what they call the loyal opposition, right? Elvis, I bet you can. Because it's your first time, this is just a warning. If it happens again, the channel will get striked. Okay, I won't do it again. Okay. You won't be able to do things like upload, post, or live stream for a week. Okay. Community guidelines, strike basis, review content with your policies in mind. Sincerely, your YouTube Help Center email options. Was this email helpful? Yes. Additional comments? Nope, don't. Anyway. So, I feel somewhat, like I said, that was like getting 1,000 thumbs up, right? Just gave you one. Oh, thanks, Toolman. Who else is there? Anybody else there? Anyway, 23 minutes and 23 seconds. Oh, I love it when that happens. So back to and I hope other people, like I said, go to my channel and take down and put on thumb drives or on your own hard drive or in your cloud my shows, because they may not be there, right, anymore, right? This is, but I'm again, hey, don't believe a word I say. This is just an entertainment show. I'm just a stand-up comedian. Nothing I say is real. It has no avenue because my content is based on love's co-creation. So it has nothing to do with the corporate minions out there, right? So it's like a cartoon, So if YouTube thinks that a cartoon is dangerous, if YouTube thinks that love's co-creation is dangerous, I think you, the audience, should think about YouTube. Somebody was, like I said, this friend of mine was going on about how the media, what's wrong with the world is the fourth wall is not representing, the fourth estate is not representing, right? The newspapers and the media is not telling the truth, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's been the case since Babylon. So, come on. And, you know, what do you have to say about that? Um, you know, so my friend was going on and on about that, right? And I said, well, the best thing to do is not listen. He said, what? I said, yes. If no one listened to Fox News or MSNBC or, uh, you know, uh, uh, you know, National Public Radio or National Public TV, people just stop watching, period, right? And talk to their neighbor with love's co-creation. This would be a better world. So that's what I'm talking about. So every time I go out and about, I make an effort to do just that. Every person I come in contact, I will speak to them in a loving way. Unless it's not gonna, I don't speak to folk who can't hear what I have to say or are too wound up. I mean, I may go to them and say, "Are you okay? Well, can I help you? Can you breathe? You know." So that's you know what I do. And now I have no real funding to do that. So if you want to send something to me on PayPal at the dudewake42 at Gmail, I'd love it. What can I say? Oh yeah, so I was playing this radio show about 16 states have passed laws that you cannot peaceably gather and demonstrate against Black Lives Matter issues or environmental issues. And some of these states will put you in jail for 20 years. I mean, you're not doing anything except holding a piece of paper saying, love Mother Earth. They can put you in jail for 20 years and charge you a $100,000 fine. And then if you're an organization like, Greenpeace, and you assist these people, you can be fined $1 million. So how's that fit into the First Amendment? Yeah. Let's see. We'll go find that story again and play it. Let's see. I gotta stand up and move. I'm gonna start rusting. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I don't think it's going to slide off.
Try to deal with them. Roach has a way of handling sometimes
The American Legislative Exchange Council, or more often known as ALEC, which has pushed other anti-protest, pro-fossil fuel, and stand your ground laws across the U.S. But these bills, specifically these critical infrastructure bills, they use that vague term, but they're specifically designed to deter protests against pipelines and fossil fuel infrastructure. These protests have historically been led by Indigenous activists, water protectors, and other frontline communities. And these bills severely threaten people's free speech, protesters' safety, and our ability to tackle climate change, because protest has been a successful tactic in slowing the build-out of new fossil fuel infrastructure. So at Climate Cabinet, we're really worried about how these types of coordinated legislative efforts at the state level can spread quickly across states, even without federal action, which is what we saw here, severely threatening our democracy and our ability to act on climate change.
Go into some detail, if you would, about the various harsh penalties that are invoked here in these new state laws. It's quite alarming when you read the summary of your report, which talks about up to 10 years in prison or $1 million fine. What's the range of penalties here?
Right, it is extremely concerning, especially because it's important to note that, of course, trespassing and vandalizing any sort of property is already illegal, usually as a misdemeanor, and protesters and activists know that. But these bills really heighten those penalties and make it extremely dangerous and potentially life-altering to take part in one of these protests, expressing free speech and the right to assemble. So these bills heighten penalties for trespassing and for vandalism on critical infrastructure, which includes things like pipelines. The penalties can range from up to fines at $10,000 to $100,000 for trespassing or vandalism, depending on the state, a range between 6 months to up to 10 years in prison. It also includes really scary penalties for organizations, which could be on the hook for supporting protesters or even communicating with protesters. This is called vicarious liability, and basically it could make it risky for environmental organizations to even communicate or try to help out activists that are taking part in these protests, which are known to slow the expansion of fossil fuels. And those fines can be up to $1 million for those organizations aiding protesters.
So, in that case, you would have an organization be fearful they could be bankrupted by such a law if they lent any support or, as you said, communication with people engaged in nonviolent civil disobedience. This country and the world, as a matter of fact, has a long history of social justice protests and movements engaging in nonviolent civil disobedience to move society forward in a progressive direction. And that has succeeded time and again all across this world. What are your concerns about people who strongly believe in a cause and choose to engage in nonviolent civil disobedience? What kind of chilling effect will these laws have? And is there any current evidence that these laws have in fact chilled or intimidated people from engaging in such action?
I definitely agree with you. This country does have a long history of direct action and activism leading to important social change, and it's very scary that there's this coordinated effort to criminalize that right and the ability to work to make this country better. And this is happening on fossil fuel pipeline protests. We're seeing anti-protest laws as a backlash to the Black Lives Matter movement as well. But specifically with these pipeline protests, critical infrastructure bills, one of the main issues that comes up is that they're really vague and unclear, which makes it difficult for activists to have a clear sense of what risks they're actually taking on when they choose to take part in a protest. And that contributes to the chilling effect because it's unclear whether or not you will be penalized. And we've seen activists arrested under these laws for activities that are actually still legal, but it's just unclear and the implementation is so difficult when the law is so vague. So, for example, in Louisiana, there's an example of some activists that were staging a peaceful protest in kayaks, fighting for clean water. Their actions were totally legal. They were allowed to be there. They weren't doing anything besides peacefully protesting in kayaks, and they were arrested under felony charges. Those charges were eventually dropped, but it still had the effect of suppressing their free speech and ability to assemble because this law was in place and was interpreted in a way that was maybe or maybe not how it was intended.
That was Emma Fisher, Deputy Director with the group Climate Cabinet. Find a link to their new report, 17 States Passed Anti-Protest Laws to Suppress Fossil Fuel Infrastructure Opposition, and related articles by visiting our Between the Lines website at btlonline.org.
So, that wasn't me making any false statements.
You've been listening to Between the Lines, a weekly program presenting news and analysis of critical issues affecting our communities, the nation, and the world. Between the Lines is produced and distributed by Squeaky Wheel Productions. If you have suggestions for topics and guests, please contact Between the Lines through our website at btlonline.org, where you can hear our current and archived programs and streaming audio and support our show. There you can also subscribe to free weekly podcasts, program summaries, and interview transcripts. Follow us on Facebook at Between the Lines Radio News Magazine and on Twitter at BTL Radio News. Thanks for listening on WHYR in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, KTAL in Las Cruces, New Mexico, Progressive Voices Network nationwide, dozens of other community radio stations across the U.S. and abroad, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Our theme music was written by Richard Hill and performed by Mika Tai. This
kind of imagine a different future than the one we have now.
First Star Newscast, it's Saturday, September 24, 2022.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Louise Schiavone. Russian forces today are launching new strikes on Ukrainian cities. At the same time, Kremlin-orchestrated voting continues in occupied regions of Ukraine to pave the way for their annexation by Moscow. The U.S. and its allies do not recognize the voting as legitimate. Vladimir Putin's mobilization of an additional 300,000 Russians to the war in Ukraine has triggered an exodus of many Russian men trying desperately to leave the country ahead of conscription. As NPR's Rob Schmitz tells us, German officials say their country is ready to take them in.
German Interior Minister Nancy Faeser said in an interview with German media that Russian deserters threatened with repression can, as a rule, obtain international protection in Germany through applying for political asylum. Another German official, Justice Minister Marco Buschmann, tweeted that anyone who he says hates Putin's path and loves liberal democracy is welcome in Germany. On Thursday, a Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, downplayed reports of draft-age men from Russia fleeing en masse after Putin's announcement. But German human rights organizations are calling on European countries to grant asylum to deserters and conscientious objectors from Russia and Belarus. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Berlin.
Former President Donald Trump was in Wilmington, North Carolina last night as part of his Save America tour. Trump's been campaigning for Republican candidates ahead of the midterms. He used the event to reject the mounting legal trouble he faces personally and politically. From member station WHQR, Camille Mojica reports.
During his speech, Trump received loud applause as he repeated the lie that the 2020 presidential election was stolen. He also took aim at Democrats for a string of legal issues he's encountered in recent months.
There's no better example of the left's chilling obsession with targeting political opponents than the baseless, abusive, and depraved lawsuit against me, my family, my company.
New York Attorney General Letitia James filed a civil lawsuit against Trump and his 3 children on Wednesday, accusing them.
So, there you heard some radio programming from National Public Radio that I did not state. I did not speak. Right? There was nothing coming from my mouth about this. Right? So, what do you think about that first story about states basically getting rid of the First Amendment? Right? And one. And you look at all those states, and basically they are hydrocarbon states. Texas, Louisiana. You would have to look up what other 17. West Virginia, where pipelines are going through. Right? And you also need to go look at the laws because again, I'm just a cartoon character. I'm as edified as Donald Duck, right? And so, and I'm an old guy. I've seen a lot, been around, and I have been blessed with these experiences and friendships, and I have over 50 friends that are still alive that I've had for over 50 years. How many of you out there have friends? I mean, good friends. That you can say anything to, and they don't scream at you and call you names. But listen and think about, man, that's interesting. And how many of you, we just played, what's his name's kind of exposition character in front of a audience. And, what did that sound like to you? A well-arranged thought? What 1936 political character does that remind you of? There's so many to choose from. Go back to 1936, especially in our own country. And so this is nothing new, right? And again, I want to thank YouTube for having this platform and for reaching out to me and giving me so much support. I really, really appreciate it. And I would suggest anyone who has been a fan, part of the cadre, who you should go. And I've been saying this. It's interesting that I get this, about I don't know, when I first started this, and I used to, the first YouTube I ever did got 75,000 hits. Right, it was on Johnny Boy's thing, and he still has it in the. And the one thing that he makes the most money out of is me telling stories, right? And so the most popular thing on his show is that, and the thing that he got most hits for is him dressing up as a Ronald McDonald character or clown. I don't know who it was. There was not trademark there, but it's more. One of my favorite videos of his is a thing called Pee Wee Herman. It's really, and another one called Mayonnaise, right? So, and I really want to thank YouTube for giving an outlet for intellectual property like that. And the most popular character on YouTube is this guy named Pookie Home, Pootie Pie, whatever his name is, and as long as he talked like an infant, he got millions of hits every time he went on, right? So that's and that is the audience that the corporate state wants to have. Very, very pliable. But what I was telling my friend last night, we were having this conversation. Let's see if I can bring that up. See if I can bring this other thing up. There's another radio show that came right after the news. We'll see if we can bring that up.
Accusing them of lying to lenders and insurers.
I did deal with them. Roach has a way of handling sometimes uncomfortable subjects with wisdom and wit. Among her best-selling books are Stiff.
Right-wing political organizations, the American legislature.
Usual but not unheard of for hurricanes to land up in the Maritimes. The most infamous was Hurricane Juan back in 2003, which did about $200 million in damage. There was Dorian in 2019. We do know that climate change and warmer oceans are making extreme weather events like this one more intense, with more rainfall. And in general, more of these storms are making landfall further north. So whatever the outcome with Fiona, and it's difficult to assess while the storm is still cutting a very destructive path across the region, many meteorologists have predicted that this will be a storm of historic proportions for this part of Canada. And it's going to leave a lot of broken records trailing in its wake.
Emma Jacobs in Montreal, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbled yesterday to its lowest point so far this year. Other stock indexes also fell. Analysts said recession fears drove the declines, and where the economy goes, politics usually joins it. We look now, we go now to NPR senior editor and correspondent Ron Elving. Ron, thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be with you, Scott.
The Federal Reserve hiked interest rates also this week, another 0.75 percentage point, and you'd have thought the stock market might have been happy seeing that as a way to control inflation, but apparently not. Why?
The most fundamental force driving Wall Street at any point is the expectation of higher or lower future profits. We don't know yet whether the rate hikes will bring on
maybe
pirates
depression.
will eat into profit margins.
But I don't know. I'm a cartoon character. Don't believe a word I say. Everything I say is a joke.
Full-on bear mode. The major indices
Bear
are
mode.
continue seeking the bottom, as they say, for some time before they begin making their way back up. And it would help a lot if the next set of numbers on inflation were just a little more encouraging than they were this past month. That was really the budget several heady weeks when stocks were heading up.
House Republicans this week released their Commitment to America platform, and a lot of it seems designed to try and make the November midterm elections about President Biden and the struggling economy. How is it being received so far?
It's a campaign document, but short of specific plans. There's an obvious homage here to the contract with America that was touted by.
Oh, and how'd that work out for America? Huh?
1994, the year they took control of the House for the first time in 40 years. It's never been clear, really, how large a role that document had in the politics of 1994, but it certainly makes a good script for a campaign. And you won't find here some of the more controversial ideas we've been hearing from some prominent Senate Republican candidates this fall. Things like making Medicare and Social Security subject to annual budget changes and cuts, or banning all abortions nationwide after a stated period of time. And Scott, by the way, we should mention that a court in Arizona has just decided that state ought to go back
I
to
think
a total
this
ban
is great
on abortion.
stand-up
A
humor,
ban
don't you
with
think?
only medical exceptions that was first put in place in the 1800s. And that's a huge distraction from the rest of the Republican agenda. They'd much rather be talking about inflation or immigration and rather not be talking about the travails of former President Trump.
Which found again this week, an appeals court ruled against him. The New York Attorney General sued him. Then he went on Fox News and said he could declassify documents just by kind of thinking about them.
Yes, and obviously that last little bit has launched countless mocking internet memes, all about things that Trump could do just by thinking about them, or perhaps other things that any of the rest of us might like to change just by thinking about them. Trump's always been a big proponent of saying things with confidence, making even the most preposterous claims with a straight face, and actually an attitude of wounded innocence. It's taken him a long way, Scott, and he cannot be expected to abandon it now.
This week, the House passed an Electoral Count Act. Will the Senate follow suit?
Hard to say. They got 9 Republicans to vote for it in the House out of 200 and some. In the Senate, they're going to need 10 out of just 50 to support this. The bill clarifies that the vice president's role in the process is just ceremonial, so a future vice president could not even be asked to stop the certification of his own defeat, the way Trump wanted then Vice President Mike Pence to do on January 6th. So we shall see if the dynamic works over there. It's probably going to have to be a version of the bill written by a Republican.
Vladimir Putin signaled that he intends to keep Russian forces in Ukraine for the long haul. What do you make of what he said this week?
It was a huge gesture of defiance, an expression of his anger at the West. He's calling up 300,000 more troops overnight and opening the door for a million more. And it came after some of his better friends in the world, or closest thing he has to friends in the world, had started to back off and suggest he ought to find an off-ramp in Ukraine.
And Judge Ron Elving, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Scott.
Military, political, economic.
Memes are all around, easy to find. Click here and scroll there, and maybe too easy to share. Extremist group is using memes to try and undermine public trust. Tomorrow on Weekend Edition Sunday with Ayesha, how meme warfare affects real life. You can tune in by telling your smart speaker to play NPR or your member station by name.
Persistence of the viral antigens in people's bodies with long COVID. We know there's an autoimmune. She was organizing with moms who were part of the Zapatista movement. She was organizing. Oh, yay. Okay, so.
Dozens of other community radio stations across the U.S. and abroad and wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Our theme music was written by Richard Hill and performed by Mika Todd. This week's program was produced by Susan Bramhall, Mary Hunt, Anna Manzo, Bob Nixon, Melinda Toos, and Jeff Yates. For Between the Lines.
Between the Lines. That's the radio show. Go look for them on the internet. Between the Lines. I had a TV show in the 1970s called that, where we read our script came straight out of the Wall Street Journal of that day, and our characters all had universal product codes on their forehead, and this was after the corporate wars. And my girlfriend at the time, Gracie, who was a stand-up comedian, really brilliant lady, we just made fun of everything. And then we got sued for taking it straight out of the Wall Street Journal. They didn't like that.
Reading folks like Jim Jordan and Alice Walker. She says, lettering is an instinct, yes, but it's also a skill that can be taught. And she believes that everyone should learn the skills associated with mothering because that's what we all need in order to actually shift into a life-giving, sustaining relationship to community, planet, life itself.
First news.
When the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, the loss of federal protection for elective abortion has forced individual states and even more intimate communities to grapple with their own beliefs and identities. But elective abortion is only one piece of a larger conversation about reproduction. The reproductive justice movement, started in the mid-1990s by Black and Indigenous women, argues rarely do we find ourselves fighting for just one aspect of reproductive justice, such as abortion rights. We sat down with a daughter of the movement, Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs, to talk about a vision for the path forward. Hi. Hi. How are you? I'm well. Yeah, I'm having a really good day so far. Excellent. What about you? I was thinking, like, I know she's going to ask me that question, and like, what do I say? Considering everything, and also this week my son had pneumonia. Oh no! So we've been dealing with like 17-month-old baby fevers and ER trips in the last week, so it's been a little. No, that's not fun.
Not fun.
But he's better today, and that makes it good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm so excited to talk to you today. Totally fangirling over here, and I'm going to go ahead and read this bio that I sort of like pieced together because there's so much incredible, amazing stuff that you do, work that you do, that I wanted to highlight some things, but I mean, there's just no way to get to all of it. Like, it's so incredible. So I hope you like this bio that I put together. Alexis Pauline Gumbs is a queer, Black troublemaker and Black feminist love evangelist, founder or the co-founder of several community organizations focused on everything from ending gendered violence to land trust to healing work and all things media. She's a writer with work published in several outlets, 5 books already born, and 1 in gestation called The Eternal Life of Audre Lorde. She's a winner of many awards, including a reading award in nonfiction for her most recent book, Undrowned: Black Feminist Lessons from Marine Mammals. I'm not done. Alexis is a teacher, making access to regular folks a priority. She founded Brilliance Remastered, an online network and series of retreats and online intensives serving community accountable intellectuals and artists. I have to ask, does this mean our listeners? Yes. Okay, great. So it's very exciting. It seems that work is a passion for the issues that and an intimate knowledge of the resilience of movements led Indigenous working class women and queer people of color. What do you think? That's right. That sounds all right. Is there anything I missed? Anything you wanted to add? No, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about things, but I like that bio. Thank you. Okay, great. today we're going to be talking about the book, one of your babies that you co-edited with China Martins and Maya Williams. This book is really very, truly dear to me. Like, it's my friend. And the book is Revolutionary Mothering, Love on the Front Lines. And if it's okay, I wanted to read some praise from Alice Walker. Oh, I love that. Revolutionary Mothering, Love on the Front Lines is juicy, gutsy, vulnerable, and very brave. These women insist on having their children in a society that does not welcome them, in a world that is rapidly falling apart. Their dream for their children, based on their love of them, encompasses the sorrow and the joy that mothers everywhere, whether human, animal, or plant, feel at this time. A radical vision,
All our
radical
relations.
visions of how to mother in a time of resistance and of pain.
Read the book, Handmaid's
There's a
Tale.
beautiful preface in the book.
Read the
by,
book
Professor
series,
Loretta Ross,
Hunger Games.
that it gives
Read
it
the
as
book,
sort of a
Brave
rich,
New World
almost like
by
sensorial
August Huxley,
context
and
to the
Doors to
formation
Perception.
of the reproductive justice movement.
Read
And
1984.
in a minute, I am going to ask you to tell
Read
me the
H.G.
first
Wells'
story
book,
of the book.
The
But
History
first, I was
of
wondering
Humanity,
if you
his most
could
read
tell
book.
me and our
Read
listeners
more
the
than the
first story
Bible.
of the reproductive justice movement. Oh, absolutely. And so the reason that we are so honored that Loretta Ross could have agreed to write a preface for Revolutionary Mothering is that we
These
definitely
two ladies are why
know that work wouldn't
I
be
have faith
possible
in
for us,
humanity's
imaginable, even
survival.
outside of
Not
the
that it's going to be
context of the
pretty
reproductive justice movement.
or
And
really
Loretta
great,
Ross is one of the founding
but
mothers.
we'll get through this.
So reproductive justice
And
is
thanks again,
an
YouTube, for
expansive
giving a
and
platform
revolutionary
that puts
vision
the
that
most
is about
effort
really
to
empowering
play
all
across
of us, but especially the people most
your
impacted by
platform
multiple
a
systems of
character
oppression,
like PewDiePie,
to
which I
have
really adore. I
autonomy
really think
over what
is
happens
socially,
with our
culturally,
capacity
politically
to create,
extraordinary.
what happens
And thank you for your
in terms
social
of our ability to
activism
define and
YouTube.
create the relationships that we have, the families that we want, the destinies that we want for our own bodies. And it's in some way the response of feminists of color, including Loretta Ross, to what they saw as some of the limitations to the idea of reproductive rights, in quotes. And so they wanted to create something that really spoke to the multiple ways that our capacity as beings that are part of a species that can proliferate, that needs each other to survive, that lives and relates in units of community, beyond the question of access to abortion or not access to abortion. And also that takes into account the histories of coerced sterilization. It takes into account histories of experimentation with birth control drugs on impoverished women in Puerto Rico. All of these different truth-telling imperatives are part of what makes the reproductive justice movement exist. I love an intellectual. I have to tell you that. I mean, I'm a nurse, and I don't know if you know other nurses, but, we are very, of the earth. And so, it is so stimulating to talk to somebody who's kind of the clouds, you know what I mean? In a lovely way. Because I'm thinking, tell me the birth story, and I'm thinking it was 1994, and these women gathered in Chicago, and they ate at Chipotle, and then, right, they went back to the South and they formed Sister Song, right? Yes. Also, there's a really important essay in an anthology called The Color of Violence that incite women of color against violence published, where Loretta Ross writes her definition of reproductive justice, which I would refer everyone to because that is
It's love.
for me, that's the best way to hear that origin story.
Love is all there is.
If you're very blessed and get to just listen to Loretta Ross or Billy Avery themselves. So there's Sister Song was really the space to say, to sing what reproductive justice is and to roll that out into the world. And Loretta Ross was the founding executive director of Sister Song. And the Sister Song conferences, but Let's Talk About Sex conferences became this catalyzing movement space. One of the things that they did that I love is that they had mother-daughter fellowships to go to the conference. And so my mother and I went to Sister Song in Chicago together. I think that at the core of reproductive justice is, and I've heard Loretta Ross recently talk about this as like a reproductive futurity, is that it is intergenerational. It lives, and they have moved that way the entire time. So in Atlanta, there's a place called Mother House, and this was, it's really a house. It was the headquarters for Black Women's Health Project, and just to give a corner to the story, which really probably only I can tell you, when I was a teenage writer growing up in Atlanta, I went to Mother House, to the basement, to lead a writing workshop and facilitate the creation of a newsletter, like a newsletter about sex for the teenagers. And they were who were part of the summer program that Black Women's Health Project had as part of its initiative for there to be intergenerational conversations about sex and profoundly comprehensive sex education. And so that was actually the first time that as a writer facilitator to facilitate a writing workshop, which keys into this idea of reproductive justice movement generating our creativity in all these multiple ways, right? And then the children of the same reproductive justice movement workers just were having these incredible conversations about sexuality and gender and fluidity and just these things. View on. It's so cool that you had such a front row seat. Yeah. And like how neat that it really ties into the book, I feel like, because a lot of the book that you co-edited.
So sex, what is sex? It's simply a biological mechanism for reproduction. It's not religious, it's not political, it's not economical, it's not environmental, but it's all of those things because what we live in is a social structure of ego. Because sex is a biological function, it is easily used to manipulate the individual and the masses. And it's because you can get a specific response because it's biological. You do this, your body is going to act that way, right? So unless you are consciously aware, unless you have conscious intent, what you're doing in the moment, right? Which, do you have that in your life? Do you do your best? Or do you just kind of muddle through, just kind of are there, right? Because you have to be. You have to be at school. You have to be at your job. You have to be with the kids. But you're not really taking advantage of the moment. You know? You're not, you're there with the kids. You're not really realizing. I have a really good friend who, he's very spiritual. And he was a pastor. He went to theology school and he wasn't a rich guy. He didn't come from a rich family, but he had a real need to do that. Right now, I came from a family that I was going to be the priest in the family, right? And so I got sent to a seminary for high school. I was in a nice public school where I had good buddies, and I was going to go into high school. My brother had been like the Elvis Presley. He was the president of the class, the senior class. So he went before me. The name was there. People expected X, Y, and Z. And I had already been in that school system from 3rd grade through 8th grade, and people knew me and what I did and how I acted, and there was a real appreciation for my character. Right, I wasn't looked as the other. Now I was, an individual, and there weren't too many of those. Right, and because even folks who thought they were exceptional did it within the construct of what the was being advertised in the culture. Do believe in this religion, act this certain way, wear these clothes, be interested in this sport, read this book. You know, me, not so much, because I was being prepared to be a rocket scientist for the Pope. So, from 1st grade to 3rd grade, I was at a place, a sanctuary, right? A Maryknoll sanctuary, right? Which was why it was a sanctuary. It was a place. It wasn't a scholastic place. It wasn't theologic. It was scholarly. There were about 40 guys, about 50 women, 50 nuns, 50 priests, and they did not wear the uniform, right? They wore civic clothes, and half of their daily activity was in service in hospitals, in schools, in you know community centers, old folks' homes, and I was taught that you know every action that you have, every moment you have, is an opportunity A, to learn something, right? B, no, A, to do good, right? To follow in as Jesus shows us an example, right? To live that life, right? One, to care for the poor, to care for the invalid, care for the one who's sorry, upset. And so, you know, from 1st grade, I mean, I was murdered by a Catholic nun when they sent me off to Hitler's rifle squad. And that's what it was. It was a Catholic school that the rat line had sent many, many Nazis into the United States, right? And the nun, I just got under her skin, in 1st grade because I was just being me. She grabbed me by the neck and boom, broke my jaw. Well, she hit me this way, broke my jaw, broke my eye, the orbit of my eye, made me deaf in this ear, and crushed my head and my esophagus, right? She tried to strangle me. And luckily, there were people of authority just outside the door that heard all this commotion. And just as she was doing it, a garbage truck backed up through the window in our classroom. So that made a big crashing sound. I came running in. She's holding my neck. And so, I woke up in a hospital. So I didn't feel any of it, from she screamed at me, picked me up, bang, I was unconscious, right? So I didn't get terrorized or have the experience of horror like folks in war do, So, war has been going on, because it's a mechanism of control, finance, and everything else in between, right? So, an acquisition of power, which is control and finance. Right? That is the end result, and and how you get there is through finance and control of the individual. So let's see.
And your homeownership teen pandemic is Governor Roy Cooper.
To deal with them. Roach has a way of handling sometimes uncomfortable subjects with wisdom and wit. Among her,
the Library of Congress, who helped, people. They would go through this one guy's office, called the Freedom of Information Act, right? So they would get to, and if you knew the document, its number, this, there were a lot of things you had to know to be able to get it. So they would.
You say that.
Well, because you're right. Yes, but again, because they're different guys, they're coming from different directions, right? So they all have a different point of view, but they're all manifesting the same kind of corporate outcome. They all, like you look at Adam Smith, what Adam Smith was talking about money. Adam Smith said there's three elements to society. There is government, there is commerce, and then there's the people. And the government is there to give structure and order to the safety and welfare of the people. And commerce is to give the fuel to move the community forward in a positive direction. Well, that's what Adam Smith was saying. That's what de Tocqueville said. That's even what Marx said. But today, where those two things, government and commerce, we aren't a capitalist state. We're an egoist state, and our politics is an egoist political structure. I mean, that guy from West Virginia is a perfect example. He is being paid by the oil companies and the energy companies. He's doing whatever they tell him to say. Thus, because the Senate is so close, they have to give that one guy what he wants. And have you noticed what the energy folk have gotten from this, bill that they just passed? That's the biggest, greatest environmental bill ever passed. Did you see? Basically, the oil companies can now drill any place they want, anytime they want, and there is no period where the people. But you're doing this in my backyard. Eminent domain rules, and the people are pushed out of the way. And that's just comic relief. Don't believe a word I didn't even say it. Did you see my lips moving? No. That was somebody else saying that, and I didn't even say it. You didn't see my lips move. And this is just for entertainment's sake. Don't believe a word I say. It's all laughs and giggles, and everything's perfect. We live in the greatest country in the world where everybody's free, everybody's happy. It's all good, isn't it? Are you happy? Are you good? Do you feel safe? And that's supposed to. You should go see what that they're doing to that bill for that guy from West Virginia. They're making it worse than it ever was. I mean, it's don't just like I'm not moving my lips. Whatever the government, the present, government of the last 200 years, whatever they say, it's the reverse. Like, war on drugs, well, they brought in more drugs. A war on poverty, they made more poverty. No child left behind, every child left behind. It's don't believe a word I say. Anyone says something like that, you can just say, okay, it's but this is I don't my lips are moving. See, I can. These are all things. Somebody else is talking, not me. It's not me talking. I'm talking now, but I'm not talking now. That guy's talking, not me, not me. Together and said, no, we're not going to. I mean, because we still have the. You don't see that coming close, do you? I see in certain places it's coming back. Yeah, I do. Well, where do you see the population threatening to interrupt this? You mean in America or around the world? Anywhere you see it. Well, I see it in Iran. This girl gets murdered. The women in Iran have been pushed around for the last 40 years, and they've had it. This is it. They see that this girl. I don't see how. Anyway, wait a minute. What did he say? I don't see how that's. Well, they're. He doesn't see how that's relevant. I said anywhere in the world where people are doing something to push back. I don't understand how you got there. Basically, you asked me. Talking about whether or not people are going to stand up to the people running the show. And I just said. You're talking about Iran and the women in Iran. Right. I don't get it. They're standing up to the people who are in power. You wanted to know one group. And I said, just in America or around the world? Said anywhere. And I said, Iran's a good place.
Okay, well, can you?
Yes, in America.
Can you point to an example where the people running the show, Zelensky, the people running Zelensky, can you point to where they're being challenged?
I say that right at this minute, there are a lot of people in the Ukraine that, so I know people in the Ukraine community in the United States, right? And that's almost irrelevant. What's relevant is you guys right there. What are you doing? You know, I'm just doing this show because I got, woke up in the morning, went up to my neighbor's driveway and went on mine, and they said, "Oh, we took this show down." And what was the show? Are you free? And yes, the show they took down. How free are you? Question mark, question mark, question mark. And that's the one they took down, right? So I'm telling you, it's great here. Everyone's got ice cream and chocolate sauce and a cherry on top, and it's the freest, best, greatest place in the world. And the most intellectual guy is somebody off in YouTube land whose name's PewDiePie. He gets the most thumbs up and likes, and he's great. And he is an, he is a leader of cultural and social and intellectual understanding of why we are here. PewDiePie, yeah. I've been on now for an hour and 16 minutes and 16 seconds. I love it when that happens. And it's kind of a response to the things in the world that they are. I played a number of things that because I listen to the radio a lot. When something interesting comes on, I just record it because I want to share it with you, right? So let's see what else we got here. Yeah, there's this guy. This is interesting. I have a friend of mine who should have gotten the Medal of Honor for what he did in Iraq and Iran. He was a minister, right? And his bosses want him to stay in Kabul. I mean, the capital, and just eat roast beef and not. But he was out in the field because he had been a Marine. He got blown up. And, he came back, and he didn't have to go back, but he went back as because he had, before he joined in 9/11, he was a minister in a really super poor neighborhood in the Appalachia, right? And he was sent up there just to basically get over this. Okay.
But it is happening quick. This entire world is going bust. New satellite images reveal that Russia is pursuing a rapid deployment and development of what could be a new type of deadly and mystery hypersonic nuclear.
And that's, like I said, that's a 1950s weapon that has no tactical or strategic weapon use. And nuclear weapons don't have either, right? Because once you do it, you're like going off the ranch. And then they can say whatever the heck they want about you, right? Come on, get to zero. Okay.
We have been getting email after email from service people with the United States military warning that they are being shipped off, or their family and friends are being shipped off to Europe soon. We won't give any more intelligence or information that we are receiving, but it is happening quick. This entire world is going bust. New satellite images reveal that Russia is actionable intelligence to anyone in the community. But if you're going to the range, say I'm going to the range. We don't have to talk about what type of ammunition, how many rounds you'll be using, what skill level of marksmanship.
So that's the guy who's like freaking out, right? And all he is transmitting the fear that he has been given um, to exercise the public into more fear. And that's not what's needed. What is the essence of everything is love's co-creation, you know. And my poor friend who sent me that, he's a great guy, and I love him dearly. And doing housework and listening to my pal. Oh, thanks. So you know, so there's our a friend of ours who's doing housework, and I'm sensing that in every day and every way, they are taking the piece of the earth and making it stronger by even doing housework. They're doing their best at doing the housework, and by doing that, they are making the world better, right? Not going on about how the world is going to end and people are doing this and that. I mean, I just played that little clip because it showed the fear that is being propagated. Now that doesn't get taken down. Everything that guy was saying is, you know, the best I could say about it is it's his, very subjective opinion. He's not, you know, and anything you see in the news is subjective opinion, right? Anything you hear from anybody, basically, including myself, is subjective opinion. And I keep saying, don't believe a word I say. But, the thing that YouTube takes down out of my thousands of shows is, you know, um, you know, do you feel free? That's the one. Yes. How free are you? That's the one they took down, right? And because that's a cutting question. How free are you guys? Isn't it great to live in this country of freedom? I mean, do you know why we have a constitution? Why? You know, you know why we had a revolution? Why? Because England and France and other European countries had been in North America for like 200 years or more, right? 1776, Chris shows up in 1492, so let's just round it out to 1492 to 1592 to 1692 to 1792. So like 300, 250 years, Europeans were here, and they were what that motif does. They exploit and extract resources. Exploit by going there and taking free land away from the indigenous people because they're not Christian or they can't write or they don't have a gun. And so, when they first showed up, the indigenous people were, "Hey, you want to share? No problem." A good example is Thanksgiving. That tribe, when the Pilgrims showed up, and they were just mercantile. They were never farmers. They were merchants, and they had a thing from the king, which they bought, and they had somewhat of. The Dutch Indies entity or some other entity like them gave them some cash and gave them the boat ride over there. But these guys got put on where they were and had no idea what to do, how to cut a tree, how to make a house, how to do anything. They brought their china and their nice furniture, but they had no idea what the heck they were doing. Indians went and saved their butt, fed them, gave them shelter, showed them what to do in the environment. And the next year, the Pilgrims were still at a loss to know what to do. It wasn't until the third year that the Pilgrims kind of scratched the earth, put some stuff in the ground, did some stuff. We're building kind of structures, and we're kind of getting a handle on surviving. And they had a party with their buddies, the Indian tribe that was up on the hill, and where they had their camp. Their community was a beautiful place and had gardens and was in balance with the forest and the land around them. I mean, when Henry Hudson came up to Hudson, and he saw all of these fields of food, right, which were basically indigenous things growing, mushrooms and this, and the Indians were just helping them to be more productive so they could harvest them, right? And Henry Hudson couldn't believe it, right? A land of milk and plenty, right? And look what the Dutch did to New York, right? So That is what is going on right now and has been going on right now. But the dynamic of it, if you go to our friend, what's her name? Let's see if I can find her. She is a mystic of sorts. She's a good friend of our friend, dark journalist. Let's see if I can find her here. Boop, 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 boop. Change your circumstances.
Hi, we're All Modern. We sell modern furniture and decor. Here, everything has a purpose and a place. We've done all the wrangling and fine-tuning to bring you the very best designs shipped fast and free. All Modern. Modern made simple.
Modern made simple.
Stop running on the treadmill every single day if you're trying to lose weight, or I'm going to jump in this pool.
The best way to burn fat and get shredded is not keto, not paleo, and it's definitely not intense exercises like this.
That ain't how you lose weight.
This is no joke, gentlemen.
By the time I hit the 90 days, my jeans were falling off of me.
I don't even weigh 210 pounds. You've lost me. That's insane. So you've lost
53 pounds.
Dang.
The truth is that Hollywood's elite actors can get ripped and just...
Now listen to this music. Now, if you can be your best, I mean, this is a contemplative channel, right? Gigi, that's the girl I was looking for, Gigi. And so she is truly amazing. Here she is. The eighth sphere. It's down there in the lower realms. So this girl, she's the real deal, and she's doing her best. Right? So that's why I love it. Now, can you understand? Can you relate? Can you be part of it? That's a good question. So let's take a listen.
Between the eighth sphere and the sacral chakra, in how our chakra system actually interacts with a good to have a cosmology. One of the biggest mistakes that's made today, especially in the new age.
Hello and welcome. Today we've got Ishmael Perez, and today we
between the eighth sphere is doing spiritual development work. Anybody would really love to know your thoughts on it. So actually really incredible that you made this connection between the sacral chakra, which is the second chakra in the human chakra system, and this sort of false sphere around the earth, because we can make connections between how our chakra system actually interacts with higher worlds and also, even the eighth sphere, especially the sacral chakra or the lower chakras. So before I get into the exact connection between the eighth sphere and the sacral chakra, let's just dive into what the eighth sphere is exactly. So this is important because anyone who is doing spiritual development work, anybody who is doing psychic development, anything to do with connecting with higher realms, spirituality, you have to have a good, strong sense of cosmology. You have to have a cosmology. One of the biggest mistakes that's made today, especially in the New Age, is when people believe that they can just open up to the spiritual world and that their consciousness or their mind will automatically take them exactly where they need to go or bring them to the highest plane possible just by default. That's actually not how psychic ability works. And in actual fact, psychic ability works as a mirror or as a kind of resonance or frequency matching. And we attract in the spiritual world what we are inside of ourselves, or we attract in the spiritual world the exact level of development that we have within ourselves. So this means that being psychic is not enough, to teach or to even work as a psychic. Psychic ability in itself is not enough, and psychism is not actually a great gift. The real power comes in actually understanding the structure of the universe, the structure of the cosmos, and the structure within ourselves. And once we know that, once we understand that, once we have a sense of cosmology, then our psychic abilities actually have a structure in which they can function properly. They can actually understand what psychic time is, which is divided into very specific epochs that have a very specific type of consciousness in them. So every single epoch of humanity, whether it be the Lemurian epoch or the Atlantean epoch or the post-Atlantean epoch where we are now, every single epoch is actually delineated as an epoch of time, because not just for the convenience of knowing different time periods. No, they're actually delineated because they represent different stages of human consciousness, the different stages of human consciousness as it develops. Now, I'm going to link below a lecture that I did a few months ago on this, called Human and Cosmic Evolution. It's totally free. I will link that below. And then you can get a good look at the different epochs of humanity and also the different epochs of the Earth itself. Our Earth, or the Earth that we live on, it has had different incarnations, different incarnations, and different stages in its own development that we have been involved with it on as well. We often perceive these as other worlds, and they're actually kind of.
So that's key. So let's see what. Lower realms. What is her channel? I mean, she's really good. She's the real deal. She's scholarly. She's studied. She's, eighth sphere, Steiner, the lower realms, dark entities, which if you go look into Carl Jungen, and he talks about the, the collective unconscious, and that we have the light and the dark, very similar to the yin yang symbol, and we have to not only embrace but first understand our shadow self, right? So her channel is that Gigi Young, Gigi Young, right? And that's a very good place to look at, right? And there's another thing. Let's see, where is this other thing? There's another great channel. It's called After School, right? And there's a great one he had on not Rudolph Stein, Carl Jung, and the description of. So if you go to my channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, and you look at my library, you'll see all the things I've been looking at, and that'll give you a good choice, So here's our buddy John, and
so kind of Jesus-like that I was maybe without sin sometimes, but still, we don't know what we're talking about. We're mere human beings. We sin. We accidentally lie. We say things that we don't know what we're talking about sometimes and mess up and flawed. But it's possible to be without sin. So I was like really kind of Jesus-like. And now I'm like kind of back to how I was at home. And let me show you what I did. I hadn't drank. I'd only drank a little bit one time when I was here for a month. And I didn't even think about sex in my thoughts, let alone anything in real life, even by myself, for about a month. For about a month when I was here, I was so kind of Jesus-like. I didn't even think.
See, that's why I like John.
Sex.
I truly love John as a friend. Platonic love, and because he is the canary in the coal mine. You want, Gigi's talking about that reflection in the mirror. You want to look in the mirror? Look at John, right? And so, and he is so. I mean, he can be, man, when his dark side, because he doesn't really. He's just like that, or right, and because he's a Libra, so he's like this, right, and but he tries so hard to do the right thing. And the thing about doing the right thing is it shouldn't be that hard. If you can be on your 20 where you're supposed to be and have conscious intent of what you're doing and a conscious awareness of what you're doing and doing your best, you do those three things, you're doing it pretty good, right? And then you have to realize you are not your body, right? This is it. This little bag of water here is just an avatar, just here to give you a vehicle to have experience of what's going on in your higher realms, right? So if you were to take what Gigi was talking about and what John is talking about and try to do this, you would get an interesting observation. And that is how I look at things, meaning I don't believe in anything. And I don't ask you to believe me, right? Do not, right? I'm just a cartoon character, right? And so what I want you to do is be a decider. Make up your own mind to do what you want to do and not do it because the TV tells you to do it. Don't do it because, the internet tells you what to do. Do it because you want to do it, right? Let's see if we can find another channel to go look at is After School. They really have some great stuff, and they have this nice one that I could show you right this minute, but it's mathematics. Randall Carlson. I mean, it's a very interesting one, but it's not what I'm looking for. Now, my other good friend that I enjoy watching, and he's pretty good. He's gives us him and Oppenheimer Ranch. So Thorn News. Yeah, Thorn News.
Well, I basically bought this roof over the internet, which wasn't something I'd ever done before, but it worked.
Far-right elements have tried to infiltrate the Ukrainian Rada, but have failed to gain actual traction. And in any case, the siege of Mariupol effectively eradicated the Azov regiment. The central alleged Nazis were vanquished. So mission accomplished, and now Russia can go home. Except not, because that is not what this war is really about. The thing is, Russia, and Putin in particular, love to celebrate the victory over Nazi Germany, holding huge parades annually to commemorate the occasion. Russian citizens rightfully reflect on the day with national pride. However, this just makes it a tool for Putin. Anything to tie the current war.
Propaganda.
Early in September each year, I sit down to start reading the latest scientific research on the state of play up in the Arctic. And every year I get reminded of what an immense and dynamic part of the world it really is. I mean, take the Arctic Ocean, for example. You could fit all 50 American states in there and still have plenty of room left over for a country the size of India. And yet every winter, temperatures drop low enough for its entire area to completely freeze over into an ice sheet thick enough to effectively become a landmass. Then, as the northern hemisphere comes back around to face the sun during the summer months, the ocean absorbs enough solar radiation to melt the excess winter ice away. It's a dance that Mother Nature has performed annually for more than 10,000 years since the end of the last ice age.
The Goldilocks.
And it has huge influence on global ocean circulation and northern hemisphere climate patterns.
There you go.
And then there's Greenland, an island the size of the 5 largest Western European countries combined, 80% of which is covered with an ancient ice sheet that's nearly 2 miles thick in its centre and a mile thick on average. That equates to about 3 million cubic kilometres of water, or put another way, enough water to raise global sea levels by more than 7 metres, or about 24 feet. Now, unless you've been living under a rock for the past decade or so, you will no doubt already be aware of scientific research and modelling suggesting that global warming is reducing the amount of Arctic sea ice that forms each year and melting some of the land-based ice from the Greenland ice sheet. And you're probably aware that for all sorts of reasons, that's not an ideal state of affairs. But as researchers carry out more and more in-depth analysis of the region and ever more sophisticated computer modelling software provides greater levels of accuracy, our scientists are beginning to realise that previous studies have been seriously underestimating the magnitude of the changes taking place.
On purpose.
And in the summer of 2022, 3 separate peer-reviewed papers were published that provide us with the unvarnished and perhaps unwanted truth. Hello, and welcome to Just Have a Think. A few years ago, I heard a comedy parody of a famous old Rudyard Kipling poem, which went something like this. If you can keep your head while all those around you are losing theirs, then you probably haven't understood the seriousness of the situation. And that's a sentiment that came to mind several times as I was reading through these new research papers. So what's going on then? Well, let's start with one of the most visible symptoms before we look at the causes. Around about this time in September, right at the end of a summer season of warming, the extent of Arctic sea ice reaches its annual minimum. Back in 2012, there were some freak weather conditions, including unusually warm North Atlantic waters moving into the Arctic Ocean, an area of freakishly warm water just south of Greenland, extra warm air coming in from a record North American heat wave, and the transport of warm water vapor across the surface of Greenland via what's known as an atmospheric river delivered by the Atlantic. All of that resulted in an uncharacteristically low September Arctic sea ice minimum. This year didn't see such freakish conditions, but nevertheless, this September's minimum is still noticeably lower than the 1981 to 2010 median. While it's nowhere near the 1 million square kilometres that is scientifically defined as an ice-free Arctic, as some doommongers predicted it would be this year, it does mark another step on an inexorable trajectory towards that eventuality. And it does look likely that we will see ice-free summer Arctic conditions within the next decade, especially when we factor in ice thickness. 10 years ago, when we had that historic low surface area event, there was still a healthy amount of very thick multi-year ice stretching right out into the centre of the ocean. That thick ice has now all but disappeared, and in many places the ice is now only centimetres thick. One violent storm event could break up that weight-thin ice and cause it to melt away into the water. One of the causes of this unfortunate phenomenon is exceptional warming over the Barents Sea area, which this June 2022 paper delves into.
Researchers from all these academic institutions reanalyzed warming in the Barents Sea over the past 40 years based on newly available observations and a quality-controlled, comprehensive dataset taken from the sea's northern archipelagos. Their results suggest a much stronger rate of atmospheric warming compared to previous analysis. The team identified what they describe as a statistically significant record-high annual warming in the Barents Sea of up to 2.7 degrees Celsius per decade, with a maximum in autumn of up to 4 degrees Celsius per decade. This Arctic hotspot phenomenon isn't just about warming air, though. The researchers point out that the northern Barents Sea region also hosts a more pronounced loss of winter sea ice than anywhere else in the Arctic. And since the early 2000s, the region has experienced a sharp increase in both temperature and salinity in the entire water.
And my comic relief, cartoon, non-scientific, totally subjective statement on this is that this is something that the planet does all the time. And yes, there's big spaces of time between them, but guys who drill into that ice and look at what the weather was a million years ago, they can see that these patterns occur all the time. And first, things stay nice and like frozen like a ice cube, or stay nice and like Goldilocks, like it has been for us for the last 300,000 years. But certain things occur and it changes like that. I mean, that's find, up there in the perma ice of Alaska and parts of Russia. They are finding caves where there are, mammoths and tigers and things of like, 500,000 years ago. And they were frozen like peas, fast frozen. Meaning, I was listening to this one, archaeologist, anthropologist, that they came upon, because of the everything is no longer frozen, it's mushy. They found this cave. They went in there before it collapsed, and they found these. It was like a lion cub's den, and they were like frozen instantaneously. There was still food in the animal's mouth, and still poop in their colon, and they could see what was in the poop, and their bodies weren't like shriveled up. They were like mummies in that they were totally perfectly there. Meaning, when they found them, it was still cold, but they were thawing out, and their hair was soft, their skin, their lips, their mouth, their esophagus. Usually, when a dead animal that gets preserved like this basically dries out, and then that's why you get fossils, right? Now, over the thousands of years, they become that rock. This thing was like it just died yesterday, and they're finding a lot of that up there, right? And so, if you read Plato, and then you read other folk like Mr. The universe is a watch, the apple fell on his head. Um, you know, he understood what was going on, but he gave the apple falling on his head just so they wouldn't cut off his head. And his physics was the physics that we had until Einstein, basically, right? And so what I'm saying is just a comic relief joke. Don't believe a word I'm saying. It's not false anything. I'm not saying anything about anybody or anything else. This is just a joke. If you read Art Bell and Whitley Strieber's book called The Day After Tomorrow and watch the movie, go watch the movie. If you don't like reading books, watch the movie. And it really shows exactly. And that movie was made probably almost 30 years ago, right? 20, 30 years ago. And it basically has given us what's going to happen. And it's not the world is going to get terribly hot. I mean, it is. It's going to get terribly hot, but then the real deal is going to, and all that water is going to, there are going to be some really wild storms. Go watch the movie. They do a very good job of showing you what it looks like. And within those storms, the storm surge is so amazing. It comes in and floods,
everything in for hundreds of miles, but it doesn't drain away. It stays there. And then, oops, all of that is flooded. So, the whole coastline, any coastline on the planet is totally flooded, right? And then it gets cold and colder and colder and colder, and all of that freezes across every place that's just gotten flooded. And pretty much a good, 3/4 to 80% of the world's population will die right there in a not a comfortable way. It'll take them a week or two to freeze to death. So, you see the scene of our hero's kid is in New York and he's in the public library and they're burning books to stay warm, which is a very nice little metaphor there. So, all of the stuff that is going on around us, the economic stuff, the global warming stuff, it's all the exhaust of burning fossil fuels. I mean, back in 1891, again, this is just a cartoon I'm telling you about, right? So, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Goofy and a bunch of their friends got together in Paris and talked about what was coming, and they kind of saw the the scholarly, remember Donald's uncle. There's Uncle Scrooge, and then there's the other guy, the Professor Duck. So they're getting together, and they're basically saying, some really hard times are showing up, and this is way before the Spanish American War, before First World War, before Second World War, before Korea, before Vietnam, before all the Mideast brouhaha, before 9/11, before et al. Right? And basically, you see that all of that conflict was put there so it would distract the basic cartoon characters, and Uncle Scrooge McDuck could get all the gold, right? And so that's kind of the cartoon motif I'm putting out, and don't believe a word I say, check this out for yourself. I mean, the internet. I just played a whole bunch of stuff, right? Just to show you that it's kind of right there, and you just got to take some time. But the problem with the internet is most people just watch what is fed to them, and they don't really do any homework or investigation or go in deep to the storyline, right? So, and that's if you want to do that, that's good. Let's see, after school hidden. That's that guy. Let's go back and find that other guy. Boom. See if this is. I think this is the guy.
The experts agree. You need to have
You
this.
need a blah 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 blah.
And in 30 seconds,
blah blah blah.
Decides whether or not to press it. Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In this episode, I want to talk about the rapid escalation of events that we've seen in Ukraine over the course of the last few weeks, but particularly over the course of the last few days. And I want to focus in on President Putin's recent announcements. So recently, we've seen Russia starting to lose ground for the first time since they started this invasion. In the early stages of this war, Russia took over a lot of Ukrainian territory, around 20% of the country by land mass. But over the last few weeks, Ukraine, who's being supported by the West in terms of military and financial support, has started recovering some ground. And it's been reported that over 6,000 square kilometers have been taken back from Russia, and that Russian forces have been retreating and abandoning their equipment. And there's now a big question mark as to whether or not Russia has sufficient capacity and personnel to be able to carry on with this war to the same extent as it has for the last 6 months. Now, in direct response to this, Russia has come out aggressively and made a number of announcements. Firstly, Russia have announced a number of referendums to be held in Ukraine. Secondly, they've announced the mobilization of 300,000 reservists. And thirdly, and most concerningly, President Putin has issued a warning to all of the countries that are supporting Ukraine that Russia is prepared to use any means necessary to defend its territory. And there's a strong implication that he's considering a nuclear strike. So in today's video, we'll go through the announcements that Russia have made. We'll have a look at President Putin's speech where he's issued a direct warning to the West about the potential for nuclear war. I'll then show you which countries actually have nuclear weapons and where those...
So this guy, Joe Bloggs, he's really good. Let's get him back here. I pushed the wrong button there. And he does his homework. He just doesn't take the data from one place, right? And that's why I like him. And he's going to explain what he does.
Show you which countries actually have nuclear weapons and where those nuclear warheads are estimated to be located. We'll then talk about the scenarios whereby Russia could use nuclear weapons. So it's not just a case of nuking the whole of Ukraine. There are different levels that President Putin could use to be able to deploy nuclear strikes. So we'll go through 4 different scenarios that Russia have at their disposal. And we'll then look at the potential responses from the West, because again, it's not just a case of an all-out nuclear war. There's different levels of responses depending on what decisions are made by the leaders of NATO. And then finally today I'll finish up with my summary as to what I think the chances are of this war escalating. Firstly, to bring in the other countries, so the NATO countries in defense of Ukraine. And then secondly, how likely it is that this conflict could actually escalate into some form of nuclear war. And on that front, I'll give you the heads up that some senior military personnel have stated that the current situation is the closest we have come to a nuclear war starting since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. So any time in the last 60 years, this is the highest likelihood. So that covers the whole of the Cold War period in the 70s and the 80s. So before we get started on all of that, I'm going to ask you for a thumbs up at some point during this video if you're enjoying the content. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Don't forget, I always include chapters in these videos.
And that goes for me too, kids.
You can skip over stuff. And if you'd like to support the channel, please have a look below where you'll find links to YouTube Super Thanks and membership, as well as Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon and Amazon links. And once again, I'd like to say thank you so much to everybody that has supported me, either by buying me a coffee or a Super Thanks, or joining Patreon or the membership scheme, or even clicking through the Amazon links. It really does help to keep me motivated. It is challenging on some days to keep producing the content on a regular basis, so thank you very much to everybody who supported me. I really appreciate it. As I stated at the start of the video, Russia has been losing ground to Ukraine over the last few weeks, and there are question marks now as to whether or not Russia have sufficient resources to be able to continue holding on to all of the territory
enough of that.
that's invaded.
You can go watch him, Joe Bloggs, and he really is good. And the after-school guys, very good. I just wanted to show you that you can go do this yourself, right? And I just kind of put some stuff into the show to kind of give a flavor of where humanity is, what's going on, how I'm getting a response from, like I said, YouTube. Thank you very much, because you've shown, your little response to me, because the show you took down, I was saying, the one you took down was what was it? Was was how free are you? Right? It kind of goes straight to the question, right? A lot of question marks. How free are you? Question mark, question mark, question mark. So that's one they took down. And thank you, YouTube, because you gave me 1,000 thumbs up by doing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Right? Energetically, shamanically, energetically, you put a tsunami of energy into my work, and thank you. Right? And again, go see Gigi Young, and her stuff is really thick, right? And but it gives you. I played 10, 15 minutes of what she's going on about, and she's right on. Meaning, when she's talking about, basically, she's you can't just like go and like get enlightenment. No, you got to figure out who you are first. And on every aspect of who you are first, right? Now, John, I showed a little bit of John, and he's talking about God and Jesus. Well, God and Jesus, and sin. Sin is a construct of culture, right? To manipulate and control the masses. Not to say that we don't do bad things, but we do bad things because of separation. We have separated ourselves from love. And so, in this material illusion that we got going on here, and we have this free will thing that allows us to do anything, right? And so we're separated. So in this illusionary world, what we have is, instead of unconditional love, we have conditional love. And instead of service to love's co-creation, because there's a natural law that you can't make anything that's made without co-creation with love is an illusion, right? So pretty much everything we got is an illusion, right? And that is what is so special about an individual like Jesus Christ. And he's not the only one. Vishnu, Buddha, they were all folks who, knew their 20, understood their 360, had a conscious awareness of what they were and a conscious intent on what they were going to do with that. And they realized that their life wasn't about them. It was about the we and me, all our relations. And all our relations is a indigenous or First Peoples concept. Around you bump into any First Peoples, in Africa and Australia, America, North America, South America, before the Europeans, corrupted, basically, and that goes for the Irish and the English and before this virus of the Babylonian banking got a hold of the world, we had this understanding of our connection, um, all our relations, meaning every feathered, furred, scaled, skinned individual was our brother. And we had to think about our actions 9 generations into the future and from the 9 generations in our past, our elders, what they did, right? They were our example. And we don't do that. We have this his story, which is a very shallow reflection that Gigi was talking about of our ego, right? So, and that's what the almost 2,000 shows I've done is a cartoon funhouse show on this motif, right? And that's what this show is about, right? It is about we are, and every so often, and the stars. I mean, we've had so many conjunctions this year. Our solar system was in an alignment that hadn't been around for at least 600,000 years. The sun is going through things that it hasn't done for a billion years. I mean, a lot of things are going on, and no one's talking about it. I mean, if you go on to Thorn, news. Let's see if we can find him. He talks about it, and so does Oppenheimer Ranch. Both of those guys do that, right? So do. Let's see if we can find our buddy Thor. Well, our friend Just Have a Think. He's another good guy. He was talking about the Arctic Circle and why it's warming up and how it's warming up. And again, that has more to do with the sun and what's going on in outer space than your tailpipe of your car. Not to say that how we pollute the world is a good thing, but it's kind of like the salt on a potato chip. And don't believe a word I say. I'm not a scientist. I'm just an old guy living out in the woods. Let's see. Here's Oppenheimer Ranch. This is Diamond.
Switch and save 650.
Blah 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 blah. Blah 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 blah
Hey, so
blah
check it
blah
out.
blah
This
blah
is
blah
a
blah blah blah
emergency sleeping bag. These things
blah
normally cost $30, and during the wintertime,
blah
it'll be
blah.
2.25 inches from yesterday. Around 11 a.m. Mountain Time 2022, there is a serious tropical threat that could be brewing for the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico later next week, showing up as a Cat 3 storm making landfall somewhere in here. We also have huge hail in Wisconsin, but the big story, Hurricane Fiona slams Turks and Caicos as a Cat 3 storm and heads for Bermuda as a Cat 4. Keep calm, it's boom time. Hurricane Fiona strengthens to a Cat 4. New tropical system may threaten Florida. We'll get to both of those in today's update. Things are getting busier in the Atlantic with another system that's heading towards the Gulf of Mexico, while the National Weather Service is watching a tropical wave east of the southern Windward Islands that is likely to become a tropical depression, and we'll cover all that. Fiona is, here are some of the after effects. We can just take a look at some of the flooding here in the Dominican Republic.
The rich people finally get it.
A sad state of affairs in the tropics, and it doesn't look like these types of storms are ending anytime soon. In fact, the tropics have become quite active. As a matter of fact,
Now,
you will believe
this
that
season.
when we go through and look at the models. Now, here's Puerto Rico. Days after Fiona passed by, and still over 1 million people without power. Now, I read a report that said most of the power will come on today, Wednesday, but I don't see any evidence of that, as Puerto Rico is still in the dark. As we come over here to Zoom Earth, we can see the current position of Fiona. Maximum sustained winds at 130 miles per hour. I like Zoom Earth because it shows you where the storm began, the date, you can track it. And this is the area in question, Invest 98L, that should pick up strength, move right up through here between Cuba and the Yucatan, and strengthen right here in the Gulf of Mexico, either hitting the Panhandle, potentially Mississippi, Louisiana,
Florida.
All that is at play here. And we have the remnants of Madeline, just a tropical depression now, feeding moisture all the way up into Canada here and through the Four Corners region, where there are flash flood warnings out for Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico. So heads up in those regions. Now here's the serious tropical threat that could be brewing for the Caribbean. We'll show you some of the models. This is what we opened the podcast on. The current model is showing it as a Cat 1 hurricane by the time it passes the Dominican Republic, as it approaches Honduras. Cat 3 by the time it's maybe going over the tip of Cuba there. Now, it's very early on in the process, but you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tropical storms or disturbances in the Atlantic alone. Disturbance number 3 has a 30% chance. This one has a 50% chance, and this is 90% chance of boom time as it comes up in here through the Gulf. Gaston, currently at 65 miles per hour. Whoops. Model just disappeared. All right, so we're going to play this through. There goes Fiona up there, as the GFS model is going to run that tropical storm right up and over Cuba, 927 millibars at the low, and then landfall on the Panhandle there. Looks like landfall is right at the triple junction of Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. So heads up if you're in that region. These are early models, and then it goes right up the East Coast there. Tons of flooding rain. That could be devastating. So prepare yourself, East Coast, for what could be a Hurricane Floyd type scenario, where you get the Schuylkill River flooding or any of those major rivers up and down the East Coast. It could be quite devastating. So now the good news is that the models keep moving us east, and if it comes up in the center of the country, none of that will happen to the East Coast. So stay tuned to the channel for the current updates. Now let's take a look at some of the tracks. Let's take a look at the current track for Gaston. It's going to spin around here, maybe head over to Africa or Europe.
Okay.
Let's look at 98L.
So you can see that we're in for a interesting month. Until the beginning of November. October is going to be wow. I would, it looks like. Let's see if I can find Thor. Let's see if we can find Thor. So, here's his a nice, interesting guy. While people are watching their video games, this is what's happening.
Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. John Nolan here. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being here. Inspire Tribe, we're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. And boy, are we with the cabal on this. These systems are horrific for mankind. They have enslaved mankind. They have destroyed our planet. I'm not talking about CC. I'm not talking about the CCP, the climate change policy. No, excuse me, that's the Chinese Communist Party. Same thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the Green New Deals. I'm talking about real, visible, feelable, tastable, smellable destruction of our beautiful Mother Earth, poisoning of the air, of the water, and of the...
We put Lumi to the test, where we looked at Lumi compared to a shower alone. This is odor here.
This is
when you
odor
would take
here.
a shower at zero time.
It's
This
odor.
is you after a shower 12 hours later. The average
The
person
guy was really
has a
getting wound
crotch
up,
odor
and
that is
they
5
hit him
out
with
of 10,
this.
12 hours after a shower. It's a proven fact. With Lumi, 12 hours later, you're going to have 0 out of 10 odor at...
So let's see. Here's
It happened again.
Jimmy Dore.
Oh, God. Joe Biden finishes his speech, doesn't know where he's going. Ready? Here we go.
Oh my God, Mr. President, thank you. At the end of such a momentous event, the word thank you seems kind of inadequate. But for all the millions whose lives will be saved...
You think he's leaving. You think he's leaving. He's not leaving.
Thank you, President Biden, for your outstanding...
Hey, there's a light on me, man. I gotta go walk over this way, man.
Hey, someone said my name. I don't know what to do. Why is he always the last guy in the room to know what he is supposed to do? When are they going to fix this problem? When are they going to fucking plan this out? No, Joe, when you finish your speech, fuckface is going to come out and grab you by the hand and show you where to go. Why don't they do that?
I don't know.
I don't know.
They just won't. This just...
Well, that's Jimmy Dore. And Jimmy is, he is part of the loyal opposition to give. Look at that. Oh, look at that. It's like a cat with a piece of string. But he still has, a valid kind of... Oh, here we go. Thor News.
Good morning and red alert, my fellow asteroid fight clubbers. We now have a major Category 3 hurricane projected to hit Florida next Wednesday. So buckle up, batten down the hatches, and if you are in the trail of the hurricane and its side effects, heavy rain, heavy wind, lightning, power outages, I would start to make preparations now. And no, a lot can change between now and then, but NOAA is predicting that Florida will get hit by a major hurricane, Category 3, in about 5 days. Definitely
Wednesday.
take this seriously as we continue to watch
Here it is Saturday.
9 develop. Now a lot can happen between now and then. 5 days, it seems like an eternity these days, even though it's not even a week. But you know how things have been. It's going to be hard to nail down specifics, but, we saw Fiona hit Puerto Rico as a hurricane, and some areas got almost 30 inches of rain.
30 inches.
So some areas here in Florida definitely need to expect.
Just think of New York City getting 30 inches of rain.
Depending on how, when, where,
Just
why
think of the coast of New Jersey getting 30 inches of rain. Just
is
think of
projected to be
North
a Category 3
Carolina.
hurricane. It could be stronger. It could be not as strong. That we will have to continue to watch. The exact path is not nailed down, but
And the hurricane that hit
a lot can change.
Puerto
as
Rico,
set
that
in.
gave
We'll
it
probably
30
repeat
inches of
again at
rain,
some
was
point.
only a Class 1 hurricane.
And Florida is not the only place that will be affected. You can see here that they're putting out major heavy precipitation warnings. Florida, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, and surrounding areas.
And then
Fiona
up
is a
the
major
East
threat
Coast.
to Nova Scotia and parts of the Atlantic Canadias, Canada.
So,
as you can see here,
so that's Thor. He's him and Diamond at the Oppenheimer Ranch do a very good job. So here we are, 2 hours, 15 minutes. One person who's watching is Miss Artist, or are you, or Mr. Artist, or Artist, or M Artist? You still doing your housework? And then, you know, my show is a great show to watch or listen to, like Wallpaper, right? You know, it's a stream of consciousness. There is no real motif other than me being a cartoon character and telling you don't believe what I say. You know, do your own homework. I'm just giving you things to think about, right? And so, and I have to thank YouTube again for giving me 500,000 thumbs up by blocking my show. Do you feel free? Right? Thank you. And I would suggest everyone who likes this show, who's been watching it for the last 4 years, you know, go look at. I mean, my past shows are pretty good, so go look at them. Get what you know, and save any ones that you like. You know, it'll be nice. I know that out there in the www internet world, that I'm bouncing around all over the place, so it'll be fine, right? So anyway, it's about, what time is it now? It's almost 3 o'clock. I've been doing this for 2 hours and 16 minutes, so I'm gonna get off. I haven't really had breakfast yet, so I'm gonna go back down the mile to my deep green and do that. And you know, I'm still in the process of preparing for winter, right? I guess I think Thursday was the last day of summer, and we went, you know, like around 5 o'clock. It was like a light switch, and now it's got that little nippiness in the air. So anyway, so I hope you enjoy my show, and I hope you will go and look at my past shows. You know, they're there. You know, go onto my channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. Hit the video thing, look at all, and just kind of flip through them. You don't have to watch them in totality, but you know, kind of put your little finger on the cursor down on that little red line and kind of zip along and see what you see. And at any point, oh, wonder what that is. I mean, open yourself up to feel the shamanic energy that I put in each show. And oh, I feel that. What is he saying? And save them on your hard drive or on a thumb drive or up in the cloud or whatever you want to do. But just, you know, keep Sensei Al Bob alive on the World Wide Web. Now, I have already, every show I do is the pebble and the shamanic waveform of the World Wide Web. So that energy is there, right? And that's, you know, no one's watching, you know, at least the numbers at the bottom of the page are that no one's really looking at this show, right? And yet, you know, YouTube deems to take up one of my shows and threaten, we're going to knock you off completely if you say anything wrong again. I have no idea what I said wrong in that one, so I have no idea what's wrong for them, right? But what it really is a unbelievable support for this show. It's like giving me 1,000,000 thumbs up, right? And I just, you know, can't thank YouTube enough. It's truly a heartwarming experience, and because this show does not define who I am, right? my body does not define who I am, right? What defines who I am is my conscious connection to my spirit, which is love's co-creation. Everything I do is in love's co-creation. Now, I am a moron, and so 40% of the time I am not in conscious intent. I am not in conscious awareness. I'm not in any of the above. But it does not go for very much longer till, oh, what's going on? I'm not doing conscious intent. I'm not in what am I doing? I have to step back, and you saw me walking around and praying. It's kind of what I do pretty much all the time to stay in conscious state. So, and I died in 2014. I mean, really died, meaning died, went and had my life review. All of my masters and teachers were like patting me on the back saying what a great job I had done, but I still had 11%. You've done 89%. You're doing great. And, and so, but, there's the but, you still got 11%. Now, you can come home, eat that piece of cake and sit in the field of daffodils for a millennia, and that's fine. You can do that if you're so tired and you need a little break. You can do that, but if you do that, you will be put in the wearing blender of karma and dharma and thrown out back into another life. And God, only God knows where you'll land. Only Bob knows. And so, but if you go back down now and finish at 11%, you will have been able to, take another rung up the ladder, and you'll be incarnated, but you'll be awakened to a point where you'll know what it won't take you half your life to figure certain things out, right? You will be aware of them, and you'll be able to serve love's co-creation much better, which would we'd be happy about that, right? So, um, they gave me that choice. We all have choices, got a free will. I could have stayed and be hanging out in the field of clover and tulips, and but then I'd have to come back. And so basically, and if you go watch Gigi, she does a great job of describing all of that. And After School Channel does a great job of bringing up really interesting information, right? And Joe, whatever, that guy with a checkered shirt, he does a very nice job of describing the world events and putting them in perspective so you can make a decision about what's going on. All the different things I'd shown you. And the radio shows that I played back, I made sure that you could hear what channel it was, what their website was, where they came from, all the above, right? And there are a lot of places you can go to that are vehicles like WETSU, which is a really excellent public radio station. I mean, there are a lot of public radio stations that suck, and that's a really good one. And so you go to their channel, and they are a internet radio, meaning they transmit over the airways, but they also transmit over the internet, right? And a lot of radio stations are that way. And but what they have very interesting, you can play back the shows that they've had, so you don't have to go to. There's a really good show they have. It's called Alternative Radio, right? That this guy David Bansayan out of Boulder, Colorado, has been doing for 50 years, and he's got 50 years of interviews and lectures of just amazing people. Go to their site, which is alternativeradio.org, and they got everything on it. And you might have to give them $3 to watch everything you want to watch for a week or two. It's like anyway. Oh, you do what I do. I just listen to it on the radio. And if you go to the ETSU website, you can listen to it too. So there's so much out there that you can inform yourself on what's going on. You don't have to stay in your silo. You don't have to separate yourself from love's co-creation. You can serve, the we in me, right? So I was given that choice and I came back, right? So when I came back, I popped straight up and I was on a gurney in a hospital in Florida and they were going to cut my legs off and they were going to crack my chest and give me a quadruple bypass, right? And I said, "Wait, wait, wait, wait!" And everyone freaked out because they were taking me from the ICU into the operating room, and I had the fentanyl drip in my arm, and I should not have woken up. But I popped. I mean, not did I just open my eyes and say, "Yeah, where am I?" I sat straight up and said, "What's going on? Where am I? What are you doing? Get this thing out of my arm!" And everyone, I mean, heads of people ran away. They were so freaked out by it, right? And the guy who was the doctor, the drug doctor who was supposed to be keeping me under, he shit a brick because he couldn't believe that I woke up and said, "Man, you got so much fentanyl, you should be dead. But you're talking to me." And the only one who was, had her head screwed on was his nurse because she basically dialed fentanyl back and gave me some other drugs so I wouldn't just have a massive, OD, because she realized this boy ain't going into surgery. So she gave me that drug so you don't have an OD, right? He didn't do it. She did, right? So she kind of saved my life because then I just have to come back again. So anyway, they wheeled me back to the ICU. The lawyer who told these morons to do it because he wanted me to do something for him, and that doctor said, "Oh, I operate him. He'll be fine in 3 weeks." I don't know, cutting off my legs and a crack in my chest. I don't think I'd be doing much in 3 weeks. So I told that guy, I said, "Listen, you don't know anything. You just took the word of that thing, but you're not my lawyer. You're my client. And man, you know the legal ramifications of what you did." He goes, "Yeah, yeah, boy, thanks." And I said, "So this is what you want me to finish my job. I understand. So this is what I need. You need to get me down to your really nice hacienda down in the Florida Keys, and I need a colonic person. I need a massage person. I need an acupuncture person. I need a chiropractor. I need an endocrinologist. I need a nutritionist." And I give him a whole list of all the things I needed. I said, 2 weeks of being taken care of by those folks, I'll be able to finish your job. And then I'll come back here and take a whole month of these guys cleaning me out, and then I might crawl out of this. So we said, okay, and that's what we did. And that was in 2014, and I weighed 460 pounds at that point. And he rolled me down to the thing, and man, that colonic person took like 100 pounds of crap out of my colon. When you get a colon, they stick this vacuum cleaner up your butt. They flush in water, and then suck the water flows out. They flush in more water, flows, and it just kind of cleans out your colon. And there's this little glass tube that you can watch the crap go by. And I swear, I saw a piece of cake from my 6th birthday. It said, "Happy birthday, 6. Happy 6th birthday." Anyway, so and those people really took good care of me, and because I was a good patient, and they were really happy to see that their practice, what they spent all those years learning how to do, really had an effect. Because mostly when they work on people, their patient doesn't respond or actively work with them to get better, which I did in a big way. So in 2 weeks, I was walking, and my legs weren't black with red lines through them anymore. I did have to be in a wheelchair most of the time, and I did have to have a wheelchair, a walker when I got up, and I did have to have like not boots, but things that went from my feet to my hips to support my legs. Metal support. Like iron legs. And I did exactly what I said I'd do, and I took care of that guy's problem. I negotiated out the thing, and by me being in the way I was, basically enabled me to do it even better because people were so freaked out by me that they signed at the bottom of the line. So, after a week and a half of working that, I went back down to his nice hacienda, and the hurricane season had blown out. It was beautiful winter weather down there in the Caribbean and the Keys, and he had this beautiful house above, actually below Marathon, between Marathon and Grassy Pine, and it was like a little peninsula unto itself. He had like his own little bunch of houses and stuff, and we went out on this big boat, and we did all kinds of fun things. And those people were still stayed down. They were happy to stay down there for another month. He paid them, and they stayed in this amazing place. And I was getting a colonic all the time, acupuncture. I was like, so by the time March rolled around, I was in pretty good shape. Plus, he took my car and he really spanked it up so it was like almost new. And so me and the dogs, and we drove back to the school, and that's when I started my trek to where I am now. So when I got back to um, first, I went to the deep green, took care of little things there, made sure everything was fine. Then I went up to the school, and and this school was, the road up to the school is like a riverbed for 2 miles. John's never selling that school until he fixes that road. Nobody's going to want to drive up that. If that road was really passable, he could sell that school because it would make a great Airbnb. I mean, it's an amazing place. And I had a friend of mine come and visit me from Switzerland, and he was a ski guy. He was a friend. I got to know him through my girlfriend when I was in high school, who was an Olympic skier, and she had a really serious, the agony of defeat. I mean, that was the picture of her. I mean, she was she was one downhill racer girl, and she was zipping down, and she hit a patch of dirt. The, it was overly warm. She shouldn't have been going down that hill. She hit a patch of dirt. She woo through the air, and she hit the concrete embutment of the gondoliers. It was like, ooh, she was messed up. And so that was it for her Olympic career, or her athletic career, right? So anyway, I got to know him through her because she had been an Olympic skier when we were, one love, and she went through that, and I stuck with her, and her guys and gals that she knew in that community were truly amazed that and I was a young guy, I was, in 20, 1920, I was a young guy. And most people couldn't put up with it. And her parents were like, they loved me, loved me, loved me, loved me. Same with her two sisters. They just couldn't believe that I did what I did with her, right? And we stayed buddies, and then we once she got, so she was, all good, all fixed. She could walk around. She was in good shape. She was still, she survived because she was such an amazing athlete, but she was never going up on the slopes, not even for fun, right? And she could get around, but it probably knocked 30 years off her life. But she still stayed in shape, and she went off to college, and then one day she showed up in my front door, right? And she had gotten pregnant, and and this is before abortion was legal, but in certain states it was. Before Roe, New York State had legal abortion. There were a number of states that had, just like now, there are a number of states that are harsh on abortion, right? And of course, if the Congress goes Republican, they will make a federal law that will make abortion illegal. I mean, that what's his name from South Carolina? He's already put forth that, right? So anyway, she showed up my door, and she was, I have no place to go, and I knew where you were, so can I come in? I said, sure. Okay. So, and I didn't have a girlfriend. I wasn't involved or any of the above. And she showed up, and she goes, I'm really in a pickle. I really need to. And I said, I looked at her, I said, oh, so you're pregnant. How many weeks? And she goes, 18. I said, okay. Because I could, when someone's pregnant, they glow, right? I said, sure, you want this? We could, have the child. You don't have your big whoop-de-doo career anymore, and you could still have a child. And I'd help you out. Meaning, I was saying, I don't know about marrying you, but I'd be there for you for the life of this child, right? And she didn't want that. And that's why she came down, because her parents wanted her to have the baby. We'll take care of it, right? And anyway, so I did that, and so I knew people in that community, and I took her there, and I was studying psychology and sociology at Columbia, and I took her to two people I knew who they were shrinks, they were social workers, and they were in that community. Anyway, so took her there, and they really did a great job in giving her all the information, showing her what she could do with her life, how it would work out one way or the other, and that if you have an abortion, that it's not just getting your teeth cleaned. And so she decided actually to have the baby, right? So we basically, and it was in the springtime. So, basically what I did, told all my clientele of what I was doing at that time. I said, I'm going to take a couple weeks off. I took her back to where her family up there in New England. And, they had the baby. I stayed all the way through to having the baby. And I basically, I didn't marry her, but I stayed with her, right? And her sisters were there for her, and her parents were there for her, and I stayed there, right? So, and then when the fall came around, I said, okay, the baby was 5 months old, and her older sister was a nurse, right? So she had a nurse on it. Her mother was a nurse and was all about and a midwife. So she was like when the baby was born, she was part of that. And they did it at home, and it was really beautiful and really nice. So around fall, about October, and the baby was like not walking yet, but a big baby, ready, healthy. Everything was great. Everybody was happy. All was good, right? So I went back to New York, did my thing, da da da. A Christmas came. I went up there for Christmas, right? And then went back to New York. And spring came, and I showed up late spring, almost summer. And we were working on the garden. The baby was running around. Um, and it wasn't even, I mean, running around, crawling around, getting up, falling down, that kind of baby. And she was so cute. And so, you know, um, for a good 5 years, that was my life. I had all this other stuff going. I was in Europe. I had other girlfriends, and you know, I would bring my girlfriends up there, and their parents would love the girl, and it's like another sister, right? And that's the kind of girlfriends I had, that didn't feel jealous or upset or anything. That this woman, this human being, was very important to me, right? And I loved her dearly, right? Yet I knew we were never gonna get married or any of the above, but I was gonna be there for her, right? For the rest of her life, the rest of that baby's life, I was gonna be there for her, right? So for about 5 years, that's kind of went on, and I get a phone call, and the phone call is from her father, and he's crying, and he goes, "Something terrible's happened. She's had she was going through an intersection, and a truck ran a red light, T-boned her, killed our granddaughter, and I don't know if Tita's going to survive. She is really messed up. Can you come up?" I said, "Sure, I'll be right there," which I was. Bang. I called everybody. I was, all the jobs. I said, "You guys got, see you later. Bye." And, I basically, the first thing I could get was a train to Boston. I went to Boston. I got a bus from Boston straight to where they are, right? And we went straight to the hospital, and she was messed up. So I again stuck with her, and by that time I had gotten all of my training as a healer, right? And her sister was a nurse, her mother was a nurse, and so they were, they knew all the doctors, everything. So this was a full in positive medical response to this, right? And she had some operations in Boston, and basically she came out the other side, but that's it. She couldn't walk, she could barely talk, she was kind of blind. There was no life to be had, right? And so I stuck out there for the whole friggin' summer, right? It was like winter till July, right? And we did all the things. She got to a place where she could, get out of the wheelchair and go to the toilet. Get out of the wheelchair and sit on a couch. She could get out of the wheelchair and go to bed, and she could also get out. She loved to sail, and her family was off of this thing called Long Lake in Maine, and so they had a house up there. So we were up there in the summertime, and I would take her down, and we would get into this little great sailboat that she had since we used when we were teenagers. We used to sail on it. So I would sail, and she just would just sit on. I'd heel the boat, and she would be on the side, like almost falling into the lake, and she'd have her little arm in the water, and she just would start to cry. She goes, "I'm so happy. I love you so much." And of course, I love her so much today. Anyway, we spent that beautiful summer. It was right around this time, and that's why around this time I remember her so clearly. And she said, "Well, you have to go home. You can't spend the winter here." And I said, "Why? Don't I have a choice?" And she goes, "Nope, you don't have a choice. You got to go home. Get back to what you were doing." I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah. We can write because we were both big writers, right?" And I would draw paintings and pictures, and so would she. And when I was in the seminary, she used to send me these really, big envelopes with stuff drawn all over it, saying, "This is what I'm going to do to you." And the Catholic institutions really were upset with that. But anyway, so I went back and we'd call her up and talk to her, and we'd have nice conversations. But there was a sense of distance, distance, distance. And so she had to take lots of medicines, And so again, one evening, I got a phone call, and it was her father. And he said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but